Anyway, welcome to episode 3 of Legislative Update. I am Ralph Boehm, and with me today is Mark McLean, who is also representing Litchfield and Wards 8 and 9 in Manchester. So we're going to start with, we will have a session, finally, where we're going to vote on bills, the whole house, and we'll be at the Bedford Sports Complex in Bedford. So that'd be interesting, but it's a whole lot of room, and everybody can be social distanced apart and wearing masks and all that. So that's going to happen. Okay, HB 20, which a lot of people are concerned about, that's the Education Finance Act, will not be voted on this year. We have a very condensed schedule, and there was not enough time to make all the amendments that were needed to the bill. So you can forget about it for this year. Same way with 670. Also, HB 135, which was my bill on the PFOA, and if you remember when we did the TV on that show, Mark was also there. Anyway, I presented that to Judiciary on Tuesday morning, but I had to leave to go to my committee to vote on bills. So, but Rich LaSalle also spoke, so turn it over to Mark here that can tell us what happened, because I wasn't there.
Well, actually, Rich did an excellent job. We actually were considering a lot of PFAS bills on the day that you introduced your bill. We had a bill looking at the statute of limitations around PFAS, extending it from 3 years out to 6 years. We had a bill that I'd worked on extensively in the last term, looking at medical monitoring, trying to kind of tighten that up a little bit. And obviously then there was the bill that you were the prime sponsor on. So Rich, I think, did an excellent job kind of laying out the case for the bill, why it's needed. Basically, the persons who have been deemed responsible for the pollution would be financially responsible for performing some form of mediation under the bill. And so it went through. There were some concerns brought forth by DES and some concerns brought forth by the Business and Industry Association. And I think, some of those were valid. We want to make sure that even though this is an area of real concern, that there's a lot of due process built into the bill. And there were also some concerns about the nature of the remediation. Would it be tied into the city water? And if that took an extended period, we're talking about having some kind of offline system set up. And I think they were asking if we could kind of clarify, was that temporary or permanent in nature. Obviously, the DES would like to see as many people as possible hooked up to city water as opposed to the portable units. So.
Right. But in Litchfield, it's not city water, it's a commercial water.
Right.
But the bill was mainly not just for us, but what about some area in the state where they don't have any commercial or municipal water? Then it would have to be a permanent.
Right, and so that's where I think they were looking at, and especially in that kind of situation where the bill had basically set a window of 6 months to do the hookup. There were some concerns about that. So I think the bill has a lot of merit. I do think, though, I have to go back and look at it, maybe amend it a little bit. I'll probably be talking to you a little bit about it. The underlying principle, obviously, I think is sound, and the people of Litchfield, Merrimack, do need some relief. So we'll be looking at that. But a lot of PFAS bills up on the agenda as well.
Yes.
So.
But like I said, we made it so it would not just for PFAS, it's for any pollution that's done anywhere. Excuse me. So hopefully, and how it works, it's my bill until I give it to the committee, which I gave it to the committee. Now it's their bill, and they can do whatever they want to it. I mean, but with consultations, I'll definitely. And Mark's the vice chair of Judiciary, so he has a little weight, but. So hopefully we can get something done, and if there are some concerns, we can work them out and get it done. But I think the big thing is here in Litchfield, we got what we wanted from the DES, except for paying the water bills, which people have never mostly paid before, even though they had maintenance on their wells and whatnot, but nothing to do with
to that level.
to that level,
Yeah,
especially in Litchfield, where we know our water bill is a whole lot more than Manchester's water bill,
Absolutely. Yeah.
or Hudson's water bill. And that was interesting. There are a couple of houses, residents in Litchfield, that got put on the Manchester water thing. And in Bedford, they're on the Manchester water. It would be nice if we can just, since a lot of it was done on 3A, it could have been a good continuation. But anyway, so hopefully, well, in the next month or so, we'll have some good issues on that. Also, we also have an issue, nothing we can do legislator-wise. We know with the Pennachuck water rates, they want to do a 21% increase.
Yeah, we got the letter.
Yeah, and we're already three times higher, or nearly will be 3 times higher than Hudson, who gets their water from Litchfield.
Yeah.
So anyway, that we can spend the whole day on that. But anyway, which we have. Anyway, so we have a calendar that has bills in it. So that's what we want to discuss. Now, this calendar, we're going to have 2-day voting session on this Wednesday and Thursday. Like I said, at the Bedford Sports Complex. Part 1 is 2 parts to this calendar. Part 1 is the bills that have to be voted on. They go to a second committee. Part bills are bills that, if we don't make it through Wednesday and Thursday, they don't have to be voted on. But all bills have to be out of the House by March 18th. So we're going to be busy in Judiciary and in Education and every place else about getting bills done. And we have a very condensed calendar. I mean, we started at least 2-3 weeks late on doing these bills because of trying to fix things so we can do, all the committees can't meet like they used to. Doing double rooms, and reps can zoom in on their committee rather than being there. So it's kind of difficult, and also makes it harder on the committees. And I don't know if you found it in Judiciary, but since people can dial in and zoom in, they have to be there. So it sort of limits transportation-wise on getting there. But now anybody can be there, including all across the country. Yeah. So we've had people coming in from...
Yeah, we're finding hundreds and hundreds of people signing up on the blue sheets. We've been very lucky, though, in our committee at least, because even on a lot of the more controversial bills, which would be the life bills, things of this nature, we get a lot of people signing up, but we've been lucky. We've been able to manage it so far. I know that you in Education, with HB 20, you got slammed pretty hard.
We had 2 full days of, and then we needed amendments to it and whatnot, and we didn't have time to fix it because OLS, Legislative Services, even when we give them an amendment, it comes back wrong. So we've been fighting them, and
well, and that's the problem. I mean, in the past, pre-pandemic, we could go down to OLS and you could actually meet with a person, and there's a back and forth where you can kind of have a discussion.
Right.
And everything, when we're doing things remotely, it slows down because it's hard to convey intent. So you go in and you just are sending in these words, and those words verbatim are being what's put in, and so it can take you a few times to get it right, where if you were there in person, it does go a lot faster. So there are a lot of logistical challenges with the
and also we found the legislative person that we've had for years and years and years is now working at another thing. He's not working Education anymore, so it's like training somebody new. So anyway, just to quickly, so I'm just going to go through the House calendar here to show you can see what it looks like, the deadlines. But first we have what's called the consent calendar. Now what these are, these are bills that most of the people on the committee, it's like 18-2 or 20-0, and there's no argument. So they put on the consent calendar, and how that works is take one vote on everything in the consent calendar. It only takes one rep to pull something off the consent calendar, then it's put it at the end of the day and gets voted on then. And we've had people in the past that took everything off the consent calendar, but just as a spite thing. Anyway, so for example, on education, there's a couple bills. A committee to study transportation and tuition on CTEs, like the students that go to Alvern and whatnot. So there's a problem there. We're not the transportation isn't paid enough, and and one of the problems Manchester has is they have students going from Manchester West over to the other side of Manchester, yep. And it takes longer for them to get there than, for example, us to go to Alvern. Yep. So there's a big problem in looking at that transportation and the cost of it. And right now it's like the transportation is getting something like 10 cents a mile, and that's not right. So we'll look at that. The committee going to be looking at that. And also, I thought I mentioned this a while ago. Doing a better background checks on school employees, so that'll be coming up. And so just quickly, now what you can do is go and read all these on Safe and Fish and Game if you want to look at it, what's going on in health. Now, something to remember, if you're looking at the bill, just what's there in the bill, if it says it was amended, then it's not the bill you can read if you go on and look at it. It's been amended and changed. Like one of the bills in education, it's nothing like the original bill, which we'll get through. So that's, and Judiciary, there was a constitutional amendment which was 20-1 to kill it. Relative to forfeiture of personal property, that was 18-2. I mean, and you can read these. Okay, and then in labor, municipal and county.
So all these bills are the ones where there's a huge amount of consensus within
Right.
the committee,
Right.
that they have broad support. So rather that by putting those on consent, it allows time to be left available for the more contentious bills where you're really going to be going into the debate.
Right.
So that'll come up in the regular calendar.
Yeah. And so now, here's the regular calendar. Now, these bills have to be voted on individually. And like I mentioned, the first thing you can, like here, the first bill here ought to pass with amendment. So there is an amendment. So first you have to vote for the amendment. Do we want the amendment? And then you vote for the bill. So sometimes the amendment loses, but then you build the bill without the amendment. And it's always a double vote. For example, if one of these bills says it ought to pass and people vote no, more people vote no than yes, then somebody's got to make a motion, another motion like the ITL to kill it, and then you vote on that. So just because you say no doesn't mean you killed it, just said no to that motion, because another motion could be to put it on the table or even send it back to the committee. Okay, so let's just go quickly. Education. Here's one here, and you can see it was a blurb. We call it committee report that I wrote. It's establishing the Office of School Counseling and Psychology, and we voted that close vote. What was it? 11-9 on inexpedient to legislature. My argument there is basically saying, let the Department of Education determine who they want, and if they really want something, they can put it in their budget and ask finance for it. We should not be telling any department what they need to hire. It's up to the department. And even it says here in the minority that it was done, the position was in place in 2018. So it's there. If the department doesn't want to fund it, it's up to the department. We should not be telling any department what they need to do. Anyway. Another one, inexpedient to legislature on some of these, 18-2. That wasn't on consent because probably somebody didn't want it on consent. School building aid. This is a good one. On HB 594, this will go to finance after it's voted on. This, if you look at HB 594 and read it, it has nothing to do with what's written here. That's why it says with amendment. It was completely stripped out. That bill was so convoluted, and you know, no way it was going anywhere. So we made it similar to another bill which we retained. But this is the bill initially, the law was up to $50 million. This is no less than 50 million. And the big thing, establish, just know if you want to need a new school, to establish a 10-year plan, okay, rather than, you know, figuring it out. So there'll be a 10-year plan, so you can plan the things and how it's going to work, is rather than what it used to be over the years. You know, if you, depending on your bond, you say a 20-year bond, you're going to get payments for those 20 years. Now, what happened in the past, in 2008, I believe, they voted, let's take all those payments and stick it in a bond, and that's why we don't have building aid today. That was like using your MasterCard to pay off your Visa. It doesn't work. But anyway, so that's why we're in a building aid problem right now. We're still paying off that bond. So yeah, up to 50 million, but most of that 30-some million is going to pay off the bond. Yeah. So how that's going to work this time is, rather than having multiple payments, if your school costs, it's like $40 million, you're going to get 80% of that 40 million, 80% of the, let's say you get 30%. So the state's going to pay 30% of your cost. So you're going to get 80% of that 30% the first year, 20% after it's finished. So, and then that's it. Okay, so it lowers your bond to start with. So it should come out better for everybody. Anyway, so that's one of the bills there. Election law, just a quickie on establishing independent redistricting commission. This has been there for the last couple of years, yeah, and it's been vetoed and failed. And this was kind of ridiculous, because this wouldn't come to the voters until after the redistricting has already been done. So it's kind of a moot bill. It's like 8 years too early. So, and environment and agriculture, you can look at these if you want. Judiciary, anything you want?
Well, we have the well, we have a couple things. First thing we have is, you know, with respect to the right to know law, we're looking to bring in a right to know ombudsman, and this is one of the rare instances where we have support from New Hampshire Right to Know and the Municipal Association. And really, if you're making a right to know request and you feel that you're being denied when you shouldn't be, your only relief right now is to go to Superior Court. And so that's a disincentive for a lot of people to go forward. And so this legislation is kind of crafted on legislation that was brought in Maine. They brought in an ombudsman in Maine, and the ombudsman it's a non-binding position, and if you're not happy with the decision, then you can still go and appeal that to the Superior Court. So many people would say, then why even bother? Well, the situation in Maine was that the rulings came out from the ombudsman, and so people in the cities and towns that were maybe afraid to release something, do I have to redact this, do I not redact this? It really allowed for greater clarity amongst the towns in terms of how they should be processing these right to know requests, and I think that's why the Municipal Association is on board. And obviously I think if you have a town that is trying to hide something, then they're not going to follow the ombudsman. You're still going to have to go to Superior Court. But for a lot of the things where there's just this fear with complying because we don't know what it should be, the ombudsman, initially in Maine, they had hundreds of cases in the first year, but now they maybe get 25 cases a year because there's a lot more clarity and a lot more compliance. So I think a lot of it depends upon who you put in that position. So it does have a sunset for 2 years in the New Hampshire bill, so we'll see.
Oh, okay.
But I'm excited about it. It's got bipartisan support, and like I said,
Which is
we'll see where it
unusual
goes.
these days.
It is. But where possible, you want to get it. I mean,
Right,
you can't always get it, but
Yeah.
where you can, you go.
Yeah, yeah. The opposition to this, it creates a bigger government, another person you're paying. But I think with the 2-year sunset, I think
Yeah.
makes it good. So hey, if you find you're not doing anything, then. But I think in this state, maybe Maine had a worse problem with right to know. But I think in most cases, a lot of cases we've seen in cities, with, like for example Nashville, it's the school board themselves fighting for right to know.
It's been tough in Nashville sometimes.
Yeah, so that might be a good idea.
And so, I mean, do we
What
have
else
anything?
you got?
We have anything else on there, Ralph? We have scroll down a bit.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, relative. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so we have, and then we have all the life bills come through the Judiciary Committee. Those are a little bit controversial. We do have one, HB 625. Right now, New Hampshire is unrestricted abortion, essentially. Right. What HB 625 would do would make that a 24-week cutoff, unless you have the health of the mother. And that actually puts us in compliance with where Massachusetts and New York are. I mean, a lot of people don't understand that New Hampshire is really out there with respect to the life issue.
Yeah, I think if life is viable, then
you know
it's a life. Yeah.
And this is constitutional. As I said, it's right down to Massachusetts. Interestingly, Massachusetts in December kind of went the other way. They've opened up and gone towards unrestricted abortion, which is something, as a pro-life person, I don't support.
No.
But I think that this should have, amongst the public, broad support.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so we'll be fighting for that one.
Good. Just a quickie in municipal and county, the bill HB 586. This is for planning boards and whatnot. And I think if you show I did with Rachel South, we discussed this a little bit. To me, this is a bad bill. Especially, it sort of makes the workforce housing bit, which, remember in Litchfield, we've always had these planning board bills to vote on and warrant articles, and a lot of times they've been defeated. This makes it even worse. The problem what I see in Litchfield, we don't have any place to work in Litchfield. In other words, the school district is the biggest employee in the town. There are a couple of small businesses. The thing is, we do have apartment houses. We do have at least three trailer parks. So I think for what we need in our town, we have enough. As a representative from Hooksett said, we don't want to be the workforce housing for Manchester. And that's what these bills are going to do. It's going to force, I mean, where would you rather live? If you worked in Manchester, where would you rather live? In Litchfield or Manchester? Yeah, downtown Manchester.
Yeah, I hear you.
So, I mean, so it's got, and somebody made the comment, well, if you have elderly housing or over 55 housing, then you should have the same amount of housing for workforce. Now, wait a minute, with the elderly housing, there's no children, which is why it was done. But with other than, we're going to have a big school budget increase. So that's one of the issues on that, 586. I don't know if how that's going to pass or not, but it go. Now we can go to the regular calendar part 2, and we have a few more minutes so we can look at some of the bills in part 2. Now, on education in part 2, relative to distribution of adequate education grants, now the big one, 194. This forces, when you take the state assessments, which is in the 3rd grade, 8th grade, and 10th grade, the problem is, it would be nice if the parent got those reports that year before June 30th, so they maybe have the child work on something over the summer. Some towns are doing it, but some towns are saying, no, we have to wait till next year. No, it's too late then. So this bill forces either the DOE or the assessment company to mail the parents the results, which is needed. Some towns are doing it and some aren't. So that's the big good bill, and that ought to pass with amendment, but at 11-9 vote. So that was, relative to the one on content of an education, which changes some stuff. And here's one, HB 320, which was a 12-8 vote, requiring a civics competency assessment as a high school graduation requirement. This has come up before, and you've seen these surveys, somebody on the street asking college students, what are the 3 branches of government? They don't know, and that kind of stuff. So what this test does is in order to graduate, and it won't happen this year, it'll be like next year, you have to take the same test that aliens take to become a citizen. So the 128 question, and it says you got to get 70%. So I think it's a good idea, and some people are against it. And it doesn't have to be your senior year. You can take it if you've taken it anytime, like in the 8th grade or any time in high school when you're supposed to be doing the civics course, which according to the curriculum, you're supposed to teach civics, but we know a lot of schools aren't.
What were the objections to that, Ralph?
Oh, we got to make time and all this. The thing, it was interesting, one of the people talking about we don't have time, then she made the comment of when she taught civics, and this was not a rep, but one of the, I said that when I taught civics, we gave the test at the beginning of the course and we gave the test at the end of the course. But wait a minute, but we don't have time. So she argued against herself. So I don't think it's a big issue. If the schools teach civics
right,
like they're supposed to, and not some off-brand thing they think is civics, then I think it's a good idea, and it forces the schools to really teach civics. And, so the thing is there's no assessment on it. The assessment for math and English and science, there's no assessment for history or social studies. So.
Well, I mean, I think everybody should have a certain amount of civic literacy. I mean, so.
You had to take the test, right?
Yes, right. I was born in Canada. I came 27 years ago, not intending to stay, but obviously I love this country. But yeah, I mean, in order to be a contributing member, you really should have some foundation in civics. So I think it's a good idea.
Yeah. So anyway, please look at the calendar. You can bring it up. If you go to the nh.gov, like I mentioned in the first show on how to do it, and look at the current calendar. You can read everything that's there. But like I said, remember, just because that bill, it might not be the original bill. It could have been changed. So then it's also in the calendar, on the end of the calendar, it also shows the amendments. Also, we have a committee meeting, Education Committee, this Tuesday, and I have a bill coming up on that one finally, but we don't have time to go into that, and that could be controversial. But anyway.
Like you.
Hey, it's by no means no bill.
There we go.
Anyway, so with that, and thank you, Mark, for being
pleasure,
here, and hopefully maybe we can do this again later in the season as we get more bills and whatnot, and maybe when HB 135 comes or goes or whatever, what the final is on it.
We're going to have a busy couple of weeks.
Yes, we are. We have to finish all our bills by March, get them by March 18th. So we only have a few weeks left to go. And by the way, I told our majority leader, and by the way, I'm an assistant majority leader.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
Whatever the hell that means. But anyway, other than get a license plate. But I told him, make sure you keep March 3rd, because that's when I'm getting my virus shot. So that's my appointment anyway. So hopefully, if people haven't, I know people have gotten phone calls, you can get your shot. It's been busy, and hopefully they're saying in April now they're going to start for teachers and stuff like that. So, but they got to get us old people done first. So anyway, Thank you, and see you in a couple weeks.